The restaurant glowed with warm golden lights as laughter and the sound of clinking glasses filled the room. It was my son Daniel's rehearsal dinner, and everything looked exactly how he had imagined it, elegant, joyful, and full of family celebrating his new beginning. I sat near the window holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold, watching the evening sky grow darker. Everyone around me seemed happy, but for some reason I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my chest. Daniel looked happier than I had seen him in years. He moved from table to table greeting relatives and thanking guests for coming. Every time he glanced at Emily, his fiancée, his face lit up with love. Emily sat at the center table wearing a pale blue dress, smiling politely as people complimented her. She looked calm and beautiful, like the perfect bride. But something about her smile felt strange. Every time her eyes met mine, her expression changed for just a second. The warmth disappeared, replaced by something colder before her smile returned again. I tried convincing myself I was imagining things. Weddings were stressful after all. Dinner continued with speeches and laughter. Daniel's best friend told a funny story from college that had everyone laughing. My sister gave an emotional toast about family and love. Everything seemed perfect. Yet the uneasy feeling inside me refused to go away. When dessert was served, I stepped away from the table and walked into the quiet hallway for some air. Just as I reached the end of the corridor, I heard soft footsteps behind me. "Mrs. Carter," a gentle voice said. I turned around. Emily stood there. For a moment she simply stared at me, her expression unreadable. The laughter from the dining hall echoed faintly behind us. "Is everything all right?" I asked. She stepped closer, glancing around to make sure no one else was nearby. Then she leaned toward me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "After tomorrow," she said slowly, "you are no longer family." The words felt like ice. I stared at her in shock. "What do you mean?" I asked. But Emily had already stepped back. Her cold expression disappeared, replaced with her usual polite smile. "Oh look, they're about to cut the cake," she said cheerfully before walking back into the dining hall. I stood frozen in the hallway. When I returned to the table, Emily was laughing beside Daniel as if nothing had happened. Later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The house was silent except for the ticking clock in the hallway. Emily's words repeated over and over in my mind. "After tomorrow, you are no longer family." It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a warning. The next morning, I barely slept. While making coffee in the kitchen, Daniel walked in looking relaxed and excited. "Big day tomorrow," he said with a smile. I studied his face carefully. "Everything okay between you and Emily?" I asked. Daniel laughed. "Mom, she's perfect." "I've never been happier." His answer should have comforted me. Instead, it made me more worried. Later that day, we gathered at the church hall to prepare decorations for the wedding. Flowers were delivered, chairs were arranged, and soft music played while everyone worked together. Emily arrived a little later. She greeted everyone warmly and thanked people for helping, looking like the perfect bride. But as the afternoon went on, I noticed something strange. She stepped outside several times to answer phone calls. Each time she walked far enough away that no one could hear her. At one point, I walked near the open door and heard her voice. "Yes," she said quietly into the phone. "Everything will be finished tomorrow." My heart skipped. "Finished?" Before I could hear more, she turned and saw me standing nearby. For a brief moment, she looked surprised. Then she smiled. "Oh, Mrs. Carter," she said lightly. "Just handling wedding details." But the uneasy feeling inside me grew stronger. Something wasn't right. Later that afternoon, Emily accidentally dropped her purse while organizing decorations. I helped pick up the things that scattered on the floor. That's when I noticed a thin envelope. As I picked it up, several photographs slipped halfway out. The first picture showed Daniel standing close with another woman. I froze. There were more photos behind it, Daniel laughing with the same woman, walking beside her, holding her hand. The pictures looked old, but they clearly showed a relationship. Emily quickly grabbed the envelope from my hands. "Those are private," she said coldly. "I'm sorry," I replied. She placed the photos back into her purse and forced a smile. Just old memories, she said. But the question stayed in my mind. Why was she carrying those photos? That evening, I finally confronted her outside the church. I saw the pictures, I told her quietly. Her eyes narrowed. People have secrets, she replied calmly. I took a breath. Last night you told me I wouldn't be family anymore. She smiled again. You'll understand tomorrow, she said softly. A chill ran through me. The next morning the church filled with guests waiting for the wedding ceremony. Daniel stood proudly at the altar, smiling as the doors opened. Emily walked down the aisle in a beautiful white dress. She looked calm, almost too calm. When she reached the altar, the priest began the ceremony. Finally, he asked the traditional question. If anyone objects to this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The church fell silent. Then a voice spoke. I do. Gasps filled the room. The voice came from Emily. She slowly raised her hand and pulled the envelope from her purse. I have something everyone deserves to know, she announced. She held up the photographs. These show the truth about the man I was about to marry. Guests whispered in shock. Daniel looked confused. Those photos are old, he said. They're from before we met. Emily raised her voice. The woman in these photos is here today. The room went silent. Then a young woman stood up from the back row. I'm not hiding, she said. She walked down the aisle. I'm the woman in those pictures, she explained. Daniel stared in surprise. Claire. She nodded. Emily contacted me weeks ago and asked me to say you were secretly meeting me, Claire said. Gasps filled the church. But it's not true, she continued. Our relationship ended years ago. Emily's face turned pale. You promised you would help me, she snapped. I promised I would come, Claire replied calmly. Not lie. The church buzzed with whispers as the truth became clear. Daniel slowly removed the ring from his finger. I can't marry someone who plans something like this, he said quietly. Emily looked desperate. But it was too late. The wedding was over. Guests watched silently as everything fell apart. Emily looked at me one last time. You said I wouldn't be family after today, I told her calmly. She didn't respond. But she had been right. After today, she would never be part of our family. And this time, it wasn't a threat. It was the truth.